would you please join me in giving a warm ASG welcome to our guest tonight, Kenneth D. King. So how do you define yourself? Are you a teacher or are you a designer?
That's
an
a
author?
tough one because,
What are you?
well, this is one of the things that over my career I kind of, I started out in window display. I know some people think that's funny, but actually, window display was a good training because one of the things it did was it taught me not to be a perfectionist. How many people here are perfectionists? It's a disease. Well, you see, one strives for the illusion of perfection, but when you're in window display, you have to freaking get it done at 5 o'clock. And so, there were a lot of things like, sewing drapes. All my drapes that I made for displays were done with hand stapler and hot glue. So, but I started in window display, then I evolved into my own business because I had a boss who was certifiably crazy. Did I tell you this story?
Oh, what?
I don't remember.
Okay,
This.
it's in the podcast too, but I had this boss who was certifiably crazy, and we had a chance to kill him and make it look like an accident. And we almost did. And it wouldn't be, and in case you're ever wanting to do that, it was the big department store with the big skylight and the ledge with the plants and the big escalator mills, 3 stories, marble floor. After Christmas, the guy I worked with we were up on the ledge, and he was on the 3rd floor with the ladder right up against the railing, standing on the tippy top, handing us up branches. And I looked at the guy I worked with and I said, it would take one. And he would fall 3 stories, his head would split open on that marble floor like candlelight, and we would be rid of it. And it would look like an accident. And I understood that, I need to work for myself now. So that's where it kind of came from. But, kind of back to how do you define yourself. So this is kind of, I take the long way around to get that way. Over my career, whether it's in window display, in starting my own business as a couturier, teaching, writing about teaching, the central pivot for me seems to be the craft. Exploring the craft. How many people follow me on Instagram? If you don't, Kenneth D. King, if you're on Instagram, yes. Because a lot of my friends are kind of distressed right now because I've gone down this rabbit hole of Barbie clothes, which is where I started. And so someone has said, you might want to write an article about it because the construction is completely different than human clothes. So I guess the thing is, I explore the craft, I talk about the craft, I sell the craft, I write about the craft. And the novel and the podcast and all that, which we'll get to later, is sort of a little side road because I do like to tell stories. So, I don't know, it's kind of a long answer. But
Well, it was a very interesting answer. We learned about your murder plans and
it would have looked like an accident. No court of the land would have convicted me. But you see, I believe in reincarnation. And I don't want ever to cross paths with this man again. So I decided to let him live. And there you have it.
Well, one of the exciting things about this evening is many of us have bought a copy of your signed book. And so I thought it would be interesting to hear a little about your book. And let's see, there's a picture on the screens there. Tell us a little bit about just what was the catalyst? What caused you to write this book?
Money. Called the passive revenue stream. You learn about that when you're self-employed. No, if you love the book, what I would say is write the people at Fred's, because Judy Newcomb was she was the driving force of this book. How many people here know her? Yes. An amazing, amazing unsung hero in the sewing world. She has encyclopedic knowledge of the different aspects of sewing. And she kind of understood what was in my head, because I'm a little bit lazy sometimes. And she understood what was happening in there, and she understood how it could be formatted so that it would be of the most use. And fitting is something we all know. If it doesn't fit, everything else is a waste of time. back in the day, and part of the reason I studied with my teacher, Simone, is that Simone trained at the École de la Vie in Paris. She was trained as a premier for couture house. And of all my education, I value that the most highly. I kind of regard it as my master's degree, even though I don't have a piece of paper. She was a tough customer, she was always hammering on, if it doesn't fit, everything's a waste of time. If it doesn't fit, don't ever. So one of the things I wanted to understand was what's happening. To me, somehow I kind of intuited that there was an underlying principle that united all the different fitting systems, because I think there's something of value in each one of them. And I would go to classes early on, and I remember this one teacher who would, very ponderously said, the drag line points to the problem. And I sat there and thought, and that was it. But it doesn't actually, the drag line doesn't actually point to the problem. What the drag line does is it indicates there's an improper distribution of square inches in that region of the garment. We're getting into three-dimensional geometry here, but, And so what I wanted to understand was, okay, because you look at these fitting books, and they would have the illustration of the fit issue, and then they would have the illustration of the pattern, and they would say, adjust, and be like, okay, how much? How do you determine how much? And so I wanted to understand that. And so fitting is, in the book, kind of the short version is net gain, net loss, no net change. You either have to add fabric if it's too tight, you have to remove fabric if it's too loose, and there are times that you have too much fabric in one area of the garment and too little in another area, so you rearrange the square inches. Then after you've made your correction there, you have to correct for distortion, which is generally no net change. So there's net gain, net loss, no net change. And so Judy, we did articles for Threads, we did an article for Threads on it some years ago. And she just said, there's a book here. And so she really was the one who took the ball up and dragged me along, and I'm forever grateful.
There seems like there's so much in your head on this topic that I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to try to put it in an orderly fashion. What was the hardest part about writing the book?
Making all those muslins. I will confess. Because, if you looked at the book, we had the kind ladies at Fred's were they have a variety of figures. We wanted to use regular people because off-the-rack people don't need to make their own clothes. And so I had to make all those muslins. And then the week that we did all the fittings, because we did all the shooting in 1 week, and one of the things that Judy said at one point, we do the fittings, then I dash back to the studio, sew up the next muslin, and then be back and doing these fittings. And Judy said, I just wish we could get on video just how fast you sew. Because we did, and so when we generated the text for that particular section, I had the digital recorder. And so I would turn it on, I'd set it down, I'd start talking about what I was doing as we were photographing. Judy would ask questions, other people would ask questions, and so when we got all of the contact sheets back and decided which photos we were using, then I could go back to the audio file and transcribe.
So I understand it took you about 18 months to complete this project.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm listening to you tell this story, was that primarily with the making of these muslins?
No, that was towards the end. Part of it was figuring out the format. And then after I did the muslins, Judy did the heavy lifting on this. I'm the first person, she did the heavy lifting. That's why I'm saying, if you like it, write and say so. Because I think she needs to be acknowledged for this. So I just kind of, she would say, do a brain dump. And so, I would just hammer out the text. I'd send it off to her, and then she would look at it, and then she'd send it back with questions, and then I'd send it back with answers. And so it kind of bounced back and forth with track changes on Word. Yeah, it was a heavy lift, but she was the one that did the heavy lifting.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I had someone ask a question about the book that I want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about so many different fit issues. You do not talk about pants.
Well, that's a whole different book. Well, no, seriously. Well, okay. Because I'm kind of getting known for fitting trousers, drafting trousers, fitting trousers. When I did this thing with Susan Calgi last weekend in Baltimore, we had 17 people. I think I drafted 14 trousers. Because I do it by measurements. You know, that was one of the part of my training. As it was explained to me by a geneticist, the Y chromosome has missing information. And since I have done so much field research on the male form in my day, there are two basic shapes. Straight up and down, they're flat and wide, or they're narrow and deep. But they're the same it's kind of straight up and down. I think women are more genetically diverse, and so there's an infinite variety of hip shapes. That said, I use the principles of net gain, net loss, no net change all the time. So, you know, this is the thing, we just, you know, I have to, you know, kind of get Judy on board to do another book because she knows she's going to have to do the heavy lift. So, I'm not saying it's not, you know, if there's enough demand, there will be a book.
Well, I think that there might be a market for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? You think there's a market for that?
And I think that, writes and letters for whomever, and, yeah.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
All right, so I want to shift gears just a little bit.
Okay.
And again, kind of thinking back over the bios that I started out with and how many different stops along the way. How have you seen your style and your techniques change over time?
Well, when I first my style, you know, looking back on it, I answer a question. And I think that maybe that's what my career is about, is asking questions and answering questions. When I started with hats, how I started with hats was after I didn't kill my boss, I understood I had to have my own business. I had my first paying customer in 1983, 84. It was a mother with bride dress. And I understood through this that I liked evening, I liked detail, I like rich people's money. I'm not a nonprofit here, So anyway, so I had a friend who worked as an accessories buyer at I Magnet, which was a very fancy store in San Francisco at the time. And she said, do hats, they're going to be important in the years to come, and not a lot of people are doing it. And the beauty of a hat is, you don't really have to fit that much, which is good. You know, the hat can fit. But one thing I learned, and see, this is where I kind of, I hope I don't step on anyone's toes here. There's couture and there's wearable art. Now, I have been exhibited, in 2005 at the Legion of Honor Museum in San Francisco. There was a show called Artwear, Fashion and Anti-Fashion. Now, the curator of the show, who I knew for years, a lot of years, wanted me in that show, and I, of course, said, I'm not art to wear, I'm couture. And she said, well, you're art to wear, but fine. I'm in the exhibit, my photo's on the facing page, in the members guide. I got the good placement in the center of the gallery. Fine. Wearable art, it's about the object. The person is kind of secondary. Sometimes it doesn't fit very well. It isn't necessary. I mean, just because you can wear it doesn't mean you should. It's a sculpture. Sometimes it's not chic. Couture, the person wearing it is the star. And everything has to be bent towards that person's comfort and enhancement. And so hats was a good training, because if you think the hat's going to fall off, you're not going to wear it twice. You'll put it away, you'll never wear it. And so it made me very conscious of the person wearing the hat. So when I quit my job, because after the boss I didn't kill, I was working at Macy's, then I needed to get just a job where I wasn't commuting, so I went to this store called Emporium in San Francisco. Any people from the Bay Area? Yeah, Emporium in Stonestown. Yes. The land that time forgot. I was convinced that place was built on an ancient Native American burial ground in the land of Curse. I'm not going to go into that, that's a whole podcast. But so anyway, so I was working at the Emporium, and I was making hats. And I just, you know, I kind of lost my train of thought. It happens, I get lost. Yes. It happens to me, yes. Well, anyway, so, you know, so I started making these hats, and I started selling to a store in Los Angeles called Maxfield. And one of the good things, kind of circling back to window display, how's my style changed over time? Okay.
Oh, yes,
I
that
started,
was the question
yes,
we started with.
thank you,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
So, the two neurons here, I haven't had much sleep. So, I started making hats, but I made a vest. It was just one of these kind of a lark kind of things, like a men's evening vest. I thought, you know, gosh, men's evening clothes is kind of boring, I'll make this vest. And it was kind of the vest with the elastic at the back, and then, you know, had the buttons in the front. And I was making jewelry at the time, and so, you know, I made hand-cast sterling buttons for this thing, and everything was packaged in black velvet boxes, lined with black taffeta, because you can have a really great product and a crummy package, you got a crummy product. But if you have a great package, you're good. So this, I had embellishment on the lapels. And so this piece took off like a rocket. That was what got me out of retail. And so because I'm sort of dyslexic, and so I had to figure out a way to make mirror images match. And so it was, how do you do that? So I hit upon using yard braid, because it has a regular unit of repeat. So, and then the two questions that I had to answer were, one, how do you make it look like this didn't go down to the trim store, buy some trim and stick it on? And two, what do you do with those ends? You can't just put them in a seam, you can't just like snag something on them. You have to make it look like it grew on there. And that started a whole range of work for about 7 or 8 years called the embellishment. So then I had a situation where the store in Los Angeles, I realized I'd come to the end of the road there, long story. And so I kind of left the marketplace for a couple of years because I needed to do some research to find out what the next thing was. And so the next thing is where the souffle, the leafing, and the cutwork came in. And these were all kind of based on my teacher, Simone. She'd always talk about seeds, she would call them scars. And she would say, you don't want a scar on your face, you shouldn't have a scar on your garment. And I make the same hand gesture like she does. And I say that to my student, you know, when I teach pattern making, I say, you don't want a scar on your face, you shouldn't have a scar on your garment. And then I say to them, 20 years from now, you're going to hear my voice say it. She does. And so the question that I was answering was, how do you make something that looks apparently seamless or is seamless? And so, whereas the embellishment was it was heavy. You know, it needed some substance, it needed some weight. With the souffle and the leafing and the cutwork, I could explore transparency because, you know, of the different techniques I was using. So I don't know if that answers the question though, but that's, you know, it's all been about exploring a question. How do you do something?
Interesting. You do seem to press into the outer boundaries.
Yes. Well, you know, I mean, why make a blazer? You know, because I had people say to me when I started out, "Oh, you're going to be the next Bob Mackie." No, I'm going to be the first Kenneth D. King. There you go. Okay.
All right. So you've talked about hats a number of times.
Yes.
And you have a special customer,
Yes.
Elton John.
He's the only person, aside from my younger sister, who can call me Kenny. He's earned the privilege. No ma'am. No. Ken, Kenneth, Mr. King, or Butch. That always gets a laugh.
All right, Butch. So tell us about this Elton John hat.
Well, okay, so Elton started buying, actually it was his lyricist Bernie Taupin who bought first. It was in early '87, and so Bernie bought the first vest, and then Elton started buying. He has well over 100 pieces. Yeah, I know, it surprises me, but yeah, he does.
Wow.
He has, you know, what I loved about him, the order was 4 hats, 2 week blank check. Something like that, you know, and so for 2 weeks I'd be like, scramble like that to get these hats out. And then there would be this big walking payday. And So he has, I don't know if you remember, in the early 90s there was a Diet Coke commercial that it was called Nightclub. That's one of mine. In the video for You Gotta Love Someone, the white one, that's one of mine. The video for Sacrifice, that's one of mine.
Can you see these hats on the small screen, or any of those?
Yeah, the little one.
The little one at the bottom,
Yeah.
the white hat?
Yeah, that's from his video.
Okay.
Now the one right above it, that was the first thing that was ordered price no object. They needed it in 24 hours. Like, they wanted it in the store 24 hours from when they made the phone call.
Wow.
And of course I did, because, you know.
And the price was no longer?
But you see, this is what, you know, this is kind of going back to, I sew quickly. You know, and Judy, a lot of people notice that, I can turn out a tailored jacket a day if I have to. Because I sew quickly. And, you know, I'm used, and this is one thing, there have been times, Threads Magazine, where, you know, we've had to kind of go in and, you know, like for the fitting DVD some years ago, you know, at the last minute, we had to go in and pull 3 tailored jackets out of my butt in 3 days. But, you know, I can do that because I learned from the best. So, yeah, that one, when they said, charge whatever you want, get it here in 24 hours, I had to buy a seat on the plane, but all good.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah. Did I tell you about the meeting?
Oh, do
Yeah,
tell. Do tell.
Yeah. Well, you see, this was in '89. It was August of '89. He was coming to the Bay Area, and so tickets went on sale at 10 o'clock. At 10:02, the tickets were sold out. I got tickets like way in the nosebleed section of the Shoreline, which is next to the parking lot. And so I called my agent and said, could you talk to Maxfield? I don't want front row seats. I just want a ticket where he doesn't look like an ant. But they said, oh, we couldn't possibly. So a friend of mine, this very kind of nervy friend of mine, said, well, that just isn't acceptable. And I had just happened to leave my Rolodex open to his people's address that day. And I have to explain to my students, a Rolodex is what she... And so she copied down, and so she sent a letter to his people saying, these are 2 creative people who obviously enjoy each other's work. Don't you think it would be great if they could meet? And they sent back, yeah, great idea. There will be backstage passes at will call. So, you know, I wore a new hat, you know, because I wanted to get a new style in front of him. And I was so nervous. Oh my God, I was almost comatose. And I'm glad she was there. So she marched me in, and you know, she looked at, because she'd been backstage before, because she's kind of that kind of gal. And so she said, that's the door we go through. So you know, she marched up to the guy with the walkie-talkies are what we had before. I know, you know, it's yes. So she said, this is kind of easier to see Elton John. And the guy said, of course, right this way. So walked us in, and there was this guy sitting in a baseball cap, t-shirt, overalls at this table. I walked right by him because
that couldn't possibly be Elton John.
She grabbed me, you know, kind of pulled me over and said, Elton, this is Kenneth, and this is Elton. And the first thing he said was, I've often wondered what you look like. Now, how cool is that? And I was able to get it out. She said later, yes, it came out right, because I had practice. It's so wonderful when someone whose work I enjoy also enjoys my work. I was able to get that out without someone. And we had a lovely chat, and he said, you know what, I gotta go sing. So, but we couldn't stay backstage, and we still had these really crummy tickets. Well, I personally could have dropped in right there. My life complete. I met Elton John. But Betsy's like, not so fast. And so I was here, she was here, he was here. We were walking out, and she just leaned in front of me, and she said, Elton, I know this is tacky, but we even have tickets. And he went, tickets for these people. And this minion came straight up, the 5th row center. Right? So here we were, like, excuse me, we're backstage. Excuse me. You know, because everyone else was there. So yeah, that was quite swell. So then, moving forward a little bit, we rented the Howard Street studio. I shared studio space with a painter. And so we signed the papers the day of the earthquake. 2 hours before the earthquake, which, you know, I was like, is this a good sign or a bad sign? But it was a good sign. So the next day, the phone rang. It was his people. And I, of course, by this time, because he had ordered some of the hats that I was wearing, so I'm like, oh crap, something's wrong with the hats. The hats didn't get there, he hates the hats, something's wrong with the hats. I was kind of down on this, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she said, well, how are you doing? I said, well, fine, thanks, and you? And there was a silence, and she said, you know, there was an earthquake yesterday. He wanted us to call and see if you were okay. And I said, yeah, great. We're having a party on, because we have this big walnut party. And so I sent the invitation. I thought, there's no way he's going to come to the party. And my mother came to the party, my mother who wanted me to be a pharmacist. I did not understand what I was doing in San Francisco making hats. She just didn't get it. And so the day of the party, Mom was home getting ready. I was at the studio. There was a message on the machine. And it was a florist, so I called, set up a time for these, delivery. So he said, well, don't you want to know who it's from? And I said, oh, it's probably Ellen. And he said, damn. I was just spitballing it, right? Okay. So it went, got my mom and my sister, we came back, and then the doorbell rang, and this just gigantic, about the size of that chair, this gigantic floral arrangement arrived. And so I'm being really blasé, like, oh, Mom, why don't you read the card? And it said, Dear Kenny, sorry I couldn't come to your party. Thanks for everything. Congratulations on your studio opening. Love, Elton. I thought my mom was going to plot something. All night long at this party, I hear this woman say, I always encouraged my children to party.
You also already alluded to another one of your projects that really is one that I think is a lot of fun. I'm going to show a little video here first.
Okay, so what that's about. My sister-in-law, the high-powered executive from Kinder Morgan in Houston, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, her daughter's daughter, Charlie, they live in Australia, is now Barbie age 4. And so Lisa sort of gently suggested that perhaps Charlie might like some Barbie book, which is kind of a command performance. And so I was saying, could you send me photos of the doll? Because they have different shaped dolls now. Couldn't get these anyone. I was like, how hard could that be? Just take the damn clothes off the doll, front and back, so I know which doll I'm dealing with. Send me photos so I can buy one. So finally, I could never get them to do this. I don't understand why, but anyway. So I said, well, to hell with it. I'm just going to buy the old school Barbie, and I'm going to buy one for myself, because that's what I got started doing, is making Barbie clothes. And I'm going to make Barbie clothes. So I started making Barbie clothes for this kid, and I was posting them on Instagram, and the fashion editor for New York Magazine emailed me and said, we really love what you're doing. Can you replicate some clothes for this article we're doing on Barbie as influencer? Now, they said there were 4 outfits, and 2 of the outfits I thought were ugly, so I didn't want to do them. And I thought, I don't really, because this was like between semesters, and I'm just playing. And so I said, well, I can do this, the red dress and the suit. I can do those, in the length of time. But it's going to cost you this much. A lot. A lot. She said, great. Okay, now after this. Yeah, well, okay. I was happy. It's like, okay, I'll just, toss Barbie's. Charlie's Barbie side. And so I made these, the suit was a Celine, the red dress was a Valentino. And it was really funny because I said to the fashion editor, okay, these are not going to be Barbie clothes you can take on and off. I want to install them on the doll. I'm not controlled. So I made these little, you saw the little lapel, the little pleated pants. Just so you know, the little secret behind the pleated pants is that's felt, and it's cut and overlapped and fused from behind. That's how you get it. Now the little belt is like leather lacing, like you get a tandy leather, and the buckle is silver embroidery thread that I embroidered the buckle so it looks like a real buckle. Yes, I go down that rabbit hole. Yes, I do. And but it was really funny because once I got the clothes done, because I also her assistant was kind of in on this, so I said, it was like Friday afternoon. I emailed this assistant and said, okay, now I need the dolls. And she said, oh, well, the photographer wants to be able to change so just send the clothes. And I wrote, and this is what's really fun is when you leave a lot of white space on either side of it. I wrote back, no. And I got an immediate response. Why not? Because I'm not making toy clothes. Send them. And so she called me, and I said, okay, let me explain it to you. If you want me to make clothes that can be put on and off, that means I'm going to have to start over. And you need these Tuesday morning. And as someone who works in a magazine, you know that damn it better happen there. I had her over barrel, basically. And I thought, no, I'm not interested in making clothes that I want to install them. So I just said, so if you want this to show up, you need to get them to me like I asked. So please, could you please send the dolls? Send them now. And I got them. So I, installed everything on the dolls, I sent them off. And in the meantime, if you follow me on Instagram, there was this whole story, the Top Secret Project, where, my assistant has taken on a life of her own. She was in Baltimore with a small food show for the people last week. I don't know where this is going. It's just one of those things. It's fun, and it keeps me amused. But yeah, that's the top secret story.
It was hilarious seeing the four, I don't know which one's the assistant, and her three friends that were all lined up.
Well, the blonde in the celery green Chanel suit is the assistant. And if you go back on Instagram, you'll see that the Chanel suit, the blouse, is made out of the same fabric as the lining. And there is a 2-scale gold chain in the hem. Yeah, my sister-in-law said, because my niece, she's like 4 years old, she said, is it okay if she plays with these? I'm like, yeah, I can make one.
I'm sure can your niece change clothes on the Barbie dolls?
Well, you see, it's interesting because my sister-in-law sent me a text and it was kind of touching because her parents worked, they had a pet store. And she wrote one day, and it was something, and she said, no one ever did this for me. And since she was a high-powered executive, she would, husband stay home with the kids, she never did it for her daughter. And so what she said earlier, because there have been a couple shipments that went, that I think she's enjoying it vicariously. The daughter is helping Charlie put the clothes on so it's kind of like we're covering 3 generations with this project.
That's okay. What a fun project. What a fun project. All right, so as we continue through this winding journey of Kenneth King and his adventures, I'd like to talk a little bit about your museum pieces that you have displayed. There's some fabulous pieces that you have.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I have things in museum collections. The one on the left, that's called the Mermaid Gown. That went into the LA County Museum in 1990, I think it was.
I think it's on very right.
Okay. Yeah.
Or backwards.
The long black gown. Now, just if you're looking at her, understand that girl is 15. She's getting her learner's finish. She's like 15 and a half. At this, the model's 15 and a half. Yeah, that's what we had to work with. Okay, and so I said to the guy, you got to make her look 35, because my customer is not a girl. My customer is a woman. She's over 30. She eats. As a rule, yes, yeah. And so, but anyway, so that particular piece, I met Edward Mader, who was the curator of costumes at the LA County Museum of Art it was in 1990, and that was the first piece to go into a museum collection. They have, I've lost track. I have pieces in, and the one next to it, the hat, that one is in the Victorian Albert Museum. Yeah, that's good. I pull that one out when I really need to pull rank. One time, because at FIT, kind of, at FIT, there was this professor there. His name was Professor Rizzo. He used to bring his wife to class every day. They looked like extras from the film Rosemary's Baby. And he hated me with the heat of 1,000 suns because, he just thought I was trying to replace him or something. And I was like, okay, fine. And we had the last conversation we had before he died. He was saying to me that you can't put coarse or braid in a garment because it'll deteriorate in dry cleaning. And I, of course, said, well, that's incorrect. Why would they sell it? And he said, you're just a damn home sewer and your work is crap. I said, do you have work in the permanent collection of the Victorian Albert Museum? He said, well, I don't care about that. I said, oh, well, that would be because you don't. And a few weeks later, he was dead. That's terrible. I really, because, he had no reason to hate on me all those years, but he did. He threw some obstacles in my path. But yeah, the day when I got that email, God forgive me, I gave up, but I shouldn't have. And the next day, there was a stampede to my office wanting to know what I had to say about it. I said, that story about when they asked Betty Davis what she thought after Joan Crawford had died. Have you ever heard that story? Yeah, some of you have. They asked her what she thought about it. She says, my mother always told me to speak good of the dead. Joan is dead. Good. But yeah, the museum collections, it's the Victorian Albert, the LA County Museum of Art, the DIA in San Francisco, and the Oakland Museum in Oakland, California. So I'm a little bit ahead of the game because back in 2005, when I was in that exhibit in San Francisco, the curator said, generally my work comes out of their collections after 25 years. And so I've been in business since, 87, so 32 years. I'm a little bit ahead of the curve. So, it's a privilege and one I'm very proud of.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so now we're really going to switch tracks.
Okay.
You have another side to your creativity, and it veers into the entertainment business.
Yes.
So I think we'd all be very interested to hear about your creative avenues. You've got a podcast, you've got a novel, you've got an audiobook. We've got a clip of your audiobook. You want to tell us about it a little bit first, or you want to listen to the clip?
Listen to the clip and then we'll go.
All right, let's listen to the clip.
The Overture. Time, April 1995. Place, San Francisco. I'd never kidnapped someone before. When I told Mark I didn't want to hear from him until he was ready to leave Victor, it didn't occur to me that, if he finally called after all those years, I would have to take such extraordinary measures to help out. As a sissy boy in Kansas, I got much of my information about life from watching movies. Sadly, though, all the movies I'd seen, not one gave me any real solid information about how to pull off this kind of caper, so I had to make it up as I went along. Mark's brother Robert called the day before to let me know there were guns involved, as Victor had a fondness for them, as well as other things like phone tapping equipment and surveillance cameras. Robert said that Mark was so traumatized he was scared to leave the house, but perhaps could be coaxed out for a short period of time. So I called Mark, using the fiction that I was going to be in Los Angeles on business, and we should have lunch. In my paranoia, I even made reservations at the Ivy, just in case Victor had tapped the phone and decided to call and check it out. What I neglected to tell Mark was that lunch would be in San Francisco, where I was living. I only bought him a one-way ticket, but I understood that this might not be a simple snatch and run. So, facing the very real possibility that things could go horribly wrong, I took steps. I made sure I rented the spiffiest convertible I could get, a black Chrysler LeBaron convertible to be exact. I also made sure I had on good underwear, as my mom used to say the ambulance wouldn't pick you up without it. They check first. And I made sure my hair was freshly bleached. My thinking was that if I got my brains blown out, I wouldn't have to pay for the spiffy car, and at least I would have gone out in style, good underwear, and with my roots done. As I drove to the airport, I thought about how I now found myself in this situation. This is something that, if things went horribly wrong, reporters might soon be asking about. As they say, long story.
That's a true story.
Tiff was nice enough to gave me a copy of his book, which I'm very excited about. And before you tell about this, I just want to say that he was gracious to give us 2 more of these books that will be part of a drawing tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow at lunch. So you might be a lucky winner.
Okay, well, if you've ever taken a class from me, you know I tell stories. You know, I have a checkered past. And the novel started out because Mark, the other character in the book, was the guy who got me the job in San Francisco. He got me out of Oklahoma. And what the book is about, when I call it All Grown Up Now, the book is about, I had an idea of what a grown-up was when I was a kid, because my Barbie, when I was a kid, my Barbie was 27. She lived in a big city, she wore even clothes, she went to the theater, the opera, and restaurants, and had a good car. And I thought, yeah. And, you know, there was a point when I was like, I'm Barbie. But what I learned at the end of the book, and when the title came at the very end, because what I learned was that doing the right thing is never easy, cheap, or popular, and sometimes it's all you have left. And what Act 3 of the book is, and what's the screenplay which I've written, is it was a domestic violence situation. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to tell is that domestic violence has no gender, it has no sexual orientation, it has no social class, it is violence. And so the book kind of started, it didn't start as a novel, it started because, I'm just, spoiler alert, he dies. You'll find out. Not funny, but you know, anyway. After that, there was a period, you know, because we were not an item, we were good friends, and I really owed him one, because I remember my studio partner was like, why aren't you getting bulletproof vests? And I'm like, well, I have to get my hair done. He got me out of Oklahoma, I owed him one. And at the end of Act 2 of this novel is in 1990 when he said, Victor's beating me. And I watched my mother go through that. And so I told him, you know, I will do whatever I can. And he would call and complain. And I finally had to say, you know, I cannot do anything. I will do whatever I can to get you out of this, but you may not call me until you're ready to leave, because there's nothing else I can do. And so that was in 1990, and in 95, right around the time of the OJ thing, he called, and I understood, okay, you made a promise, you owe him one, he got you out of Oklahoma. He made my entire life possible. He made all of this possible by getting me out of Oklahoma. And so, yeah, it started out as a collection of stories. And at one point, someone I knew was reading all of it. She said, you have to connect this. And so it was really, it's about a friend, I call it friendship in 3 acts, because there were 3 distinct periods in our friendship. And there was an event that changed. You know, I knew, okay, it's not this, now it's this. And so it turned into this book, and it really was about how I grew up. You know, what I thought being grown up was, what being all grown up now really meant. And so this then has evolved. I wrote the novel first, and when I started writing, how many people here have ever interacted with a publishing agent? Okay, you know, they're like, oh, more of this and less of this. You know, and I'm going, okay, if I do that, will you represent me? No, I'm like, okay, fine. I said, well, the hell with it then. We have the tools now to publish on our own, so I did. And then the screenplay came next, because Act 3 is the screenplay. And then the podcast, you know, it was just another way, because a lot of people don't read. You know, I give the book to people and they're like, I didn't read it. Like, okay, then damn it, you can listen to it. So if you go to the podcast, it's on all the usual podcast things, episodes 1 through 29 are the novel. And then once I got to the end of that, everyone was like, you still want to go on, this is really great. So it started, season 2 is called Tales of a Checkered Past, because I have a checkered past. Boy, do I have a checkered past. Kind of in relation to that, if you look at the reviews on Amazon of the novel, there's one review, it's a negative review, that I thought it was going to be stories on sewing. Instead, it was stories about his sexual exploits. I'm not really. I allude to them, but I don't describe them because I think everyone has an imagination. And I couldn't resist because they say, don't comment. I thought, this is too good. I just can't resist. So if you read it, it says, the title of the book is called All Grown Up Now, not All Sewn Up Now. So, it's kind of, I am 60, and I don't know how many people here follow astrology. The Saturn return, comes at age 30, age 60. Age 30 is when I quit my job and started my business. Age 60, I want this film made. That's what all of the podcasts, the novel, the whole bit, it's all to tell this story because I think it's a very important story. And it's a story that happened in the 90s, and a lot of the stories from the gay community in the 90s were about AIDS, justifiably so, but that wasn't the only thing going on. And really, the story, because last year I worked with a script doctor. My husband has a colleague who was a producer at HBO. She connected me with this guy, because I'm doing this like screenwriting for dummies, and I'm a dummy, I got just so far, and I thought, I'm just gonna hire this guy. And so now he said it's ready to shop around. So now I'm talking with a woman who's trying to find financing. So if you know anyone who has financing, see me after class. So that's kind of a long story, but it's about telling stories. And I've had people say I should be a stand-up comedian. I don't think I have the guts to do that, but that would be way too hard. Yeah, that's not good. But you already are. Yeah, well, yeah. Okay. So there you are. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, since we've wandered all over all kinds of territory, what should we look for from Kenneth D next?
Well, commercial. The bag, it'll be available probably end of September. Sewing and Design School in Tacoma is going to be, she's going to be the one who is selling it. This bag, it sounds crazy, but it was, the original was a makeup bag I got like 15, 20 years ago, and it was like the perfect configuration for everything sewing. And my students at FIT always would marvel, like, do you have, what I would pull out of this damn bag. And, I remember one time one of my students said, well, what don't you have in that bag? I said, the Lindbergh baby, and then I said, ask your grandparents. And so, it was, and part of the reason I did this was I needed another one. Mine was wearing out. And so, it has the little compartments in it. And whereas the originals were in PVC, this is like nylon screen. Way better, yes. And so,
Stand up.
oh. So it has, the little compartments. I mean, it's like the perfect bag. And so that's one thing that's coming out really soon. Sewing and Design School in Tacoma. The woman's name is Ryla Spode. Email her to say, please put me on a list so that when we actually, because the first wire transfer has been done, so the next, they're actually making them right now. And so if you're interested, email her for details, and she will let you know when they're in and all of the details. So that's one thing. But, I don't know how to answer that. Because really, one of the things I'm really wanting to do, I really want to get this movie made. And dreaming big here, Chris Colfer is going to play me. Why are you laughing? How I came up with that, because actually a friend of mine from my early days in San Francisco called me one day and she said, I found the guy that's going to play you in the movie. And because I did look like that. I know it's hard to believe now, but I did look like that. I was a beauty once. And so,
You're not a beauty now.
well, I'm handsome now. I was pretty. And I looked at that photo, actually I was showing it to a friend of mine recently, and I thought, if I had realized what I looked like at the time, the trouble, because see, I was kind of troubled to begin with. Boy, I would have covered much more area. I would have had a swath a mile wide. But thankfully, I didn't realize that.
Well, we will be excited to keep our eyes peeled for what's coming next from Butch.
Why does everybody laugh? Well, it's so funny because years ago, because when I lived in Oklahoma, I came out in 1980 in Oklahoma City. Well, and a friend of mine said, well, yeah, it was, but, for me, the thing was, I think this, if I could go back to, there's some seminal moments in my life. Actually, the first moment, if I go back to it, my mother was married to this awful man. That's how we got to Oklahoma. Long story. And actually, last week's podcast, Musings on Choice, you get the short version of it. There was one moment, because it was a day after he used to get liquored up on Thursday nights, beat her up, tear up the house. So one Friday morning, she and I were standing in the hallway looking at this door he had kicked in. And it was one of those moments where the light was a little brighter. And I do think there are just moments where the universe kind of opens up and time stops and something comes in that you need. And she had this strange look on her face. And she looked at me and she said, you could choose not to live like this. And then everything was back to normal. But it shook my life. And I remember thinking, I could choose not to live like this. And it's all choices. So when I came out, it was a choice of being honest. Because a lot of people were like, oh, you could pretend. It's like, well, no one's being fooled. You can see it in the satellite photos of space and dance. And a friend of mine said, well, it may have been a little easier for you because you couldn't pass. And I couldn't, and I can't. I am who I am, and that's who I am. And, but no, there are people who do. And I feel bad for them. But it's a choice. This whole thing is choices. You choose. My mother had a lawyer named Harry when I was growing up. He was one of the smart things that came out of her second husband. Harry looked like George Burns. And in my mind, he's George Burns. In my mind, he smokes a cigar, but he didn't. He's my mother's age. And Harry had the it gets better talk with me when I was 14. And I at the time, I didn't quite know what was going on, but my mother was going through a divorce, and I was sitting there waiting for her, and he came out and he said, will you come in? And I thought, oh dear God, I must have done something really bad, but she's having him talk to me. And I was not a bad kid. So my mom was standing there, and he said, you go away, I need to talk to him. And so I imagine my mother sitting out in his reception area, chain smoking cigarettes and steaming with curiosity, wondering what he was saying. But I sat down, he sat down, he kind of leaned back and he looked at me and he said, I've been watching you, and I see a certain something in your eyes, and so I feel I need to have some conversations with you. And I didn't quite know what, I was like, I was 14, what did I know? And he said, I know it sucks for you right now, but you just have to last. Because one day, if you just keep your head down and don't get in any trouble, if you get decent grades, you will be able to leave, and then you can choose your own life. And Harry, that was like the life preserver. That kept me going. And there were other conversations we had over the years. The other one I remember after my mother got involved with this guy who swindled her for our college money. He said, it happens. But it worked out because I paid for my own college, so I'm not a pharmacist. So. But I remember he said, lonely people do very foolish things. And that, because I was single 25 years before I met my husband. A lot of people were like, oh, it's terrible, oh, you should have someone. I'm like, no, I want what I want. And until I get what I want, I'm so happy playing the field. Did a lot of test drives, you understand. Sometimes it was around the block, sometimes it was on a road trip, sometimes it was a parking lot. Then I eventually discovered that was not the model for me. But it was all because I understood that lonely people do foolish things, and I did not want to grab onto someone or a situation because I was lonely, and that was Harry. So, I've been very fortunate in my life that I've had a lot of very wise people that took the time to talk to me and talk sense to me. And so, one of the things I try to do, I don't know if it ever works, but every now and then, if I see a kid at FIT, that I sense something's going on, I'll just sit them down and just kind of say, so, what's going on here? Because, that's my way of taking it forward.
We have a couple of questions from the floor.
Okay.
So the first one is, since you sew quickly, how many times have you sewn your finger to the fabric?
Once. Well, I never sewed my finger to the fabric. And I wasn't actually sewing when I got the needle through my finger. Just so you know, Bernina can get the needle through the bone before it breaks. It was a Friday night. I was going to go out, and I had needle stop down. I always keep it on down. And I learned, take your foot off the pedal when you're not actually sewing. So I had my foot on the pedal, and I just turned, and my finger ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I ended up in the emergency room with this stupid thing broken off in my finger. And the guys on the next gurney, one of them they were both wrestlers, big, tough wrestlers, wrestling stars. One had broken the other one's ankle. So they're like, what are you in here for, little guy? And I said, I have a sewing needle broken off. They turned into 2 6-year-old girls like, ew,
All right, if you were teaching a 9-year-old boy to sew, would you focus on techniques, or would you impress them more with being creative?
Technique. Because I think technique is important to be creative. And I would say pressing is the first thing you want to make sure they know how to do it. I took a painting class just kind of at City College some years ago, just way back when I was trying to find myself. And I had this teacher who was one of these just let the creativity spontaneously flow through your body, drove me absolutely up the walls. Like, what are these different brushes for? How do you mix the paint? All of this. So these are things that you need to have something to hang your technique, your creativity on. And I think if you don't know how to execute it, you're at the mercy of people who do, and they may not execute it like you'd like to. So I would teach the basics, but I would focus on technique, because through technique is where I have found my creativity.
Interesting. All right, the last question here is, would you enjoy being a judge on a project in any way?
I don't know.
Would you enjoy being
What's that?
judge on project?
I would like the mentor thing. I think that would be great, because I kind of do that anyway.
These have been such great stories, and as we bring this hour to a close, I was hoping that you could leave us with, I'll say 3,
Okay.
and because you gave me 3.
Okay.
But
You can give me some hints too.
I'll give you some hints.
Okay.
Pearls of sewing wisdom. What would those 3 pearls of sewing wisdom be?
Okay. Well, I think the first one would be get rid of perfectionism. It's a disease. You create the illusion of perfection. That's the best you can do. I think that if you could see, I'm a recovered perfectionist, but I understood. Okay, if I don't get it done, I don't get paid. So there's that. And the other thing is, you burn through some acres of fabric as your dues for being proficient. I think that's, just because it's going to happen. People think everything I made was perfect. No, there's a landfill in California. And what's the third one?
You don't have to do everything.
That's true. You don't have to be good at everything. My mother used to say, you should do your absolute best at everything. And you know what? No. There are certain things I don't do at all, like my laundry. But seriously, it's New York City. Why would you do that? You just call and they come and get it. And you give them money and your laundry is done. So yeah, I decided which room of the house I was going to be good at, and it wasn't going to be the kitchen. So I don't cut, I don't cook. I'm good in the sewing room. But yeah, you don't have to be good at everything. You have to be good at something. Because if I spent all my time trying to be good at everything, I wouldn't be really good at one thing. So, choose your battles. It makes your life easier. In other words, be kind to yourself.
And you said, and make muslins.
Make muslins, yes. How many people here try to wear muslins? Don't raise your hand. Don't do it. Well, no one likes them. But, you have to. I go through muslin like I go through paper towels. I use lots of muslin. Galliano. cuts 3 to 6 muslins before they cut fabric. I have cut 5 muslins for a simple bolero jacket. But by God, when I got done with it, that pattern, because it was for a customer. She was going to the Nobel banquet, and she had this strapless Navarro ball gown. Now, little tidbit. When the royal family of Sweden is present, you may not have an exposed armpit.
Really?
Hand to God. So she needed a little jacket, because it couldn't be a stole to have a full-on sleeve. So I made this, she wanted this little organza bolero. And so, there was the issue of, okay, it has to fit, she has to be able to sit down and eat, she has to be able to dance with her husband, there was all, and so it took 5 muslins. And people were asking me, why are you going through all this trouble for this? It's because now I have the perfect bolero pattern because it fits all my customers. They're all kind of a certain shape. They say it's comfortable, they can move, it fits beautifully, it's worth it. So if you don't like making muslins, rethink that, because fashion fabric is a very expensive muslin.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay?
I have to ask,
Yeah.
if she had to be able to do all these things, did you make the muslin and then you say, okay, let's dance?
Well, yeah. And I had a table set with the silverware and the glasses and the whole bit, sat her down and had it. Yeah, we have to do that.
Wow, very interesting. I don't know about you guys, but this has been an incredibly interesting evening. The books are going to be right outside this door. No, right inside this door, under that little.
Don't help yourself.
Yeah. There will be someone there to take your little ticket or your book, and you can get them on the way out. But again, let's really thank Kenneth for